Welcome to Philanthropy SA. This is a podcast about and for the philanthropic community in San Antonio and South Texas. We introduce organizations and people who are making an impact in the community. Beneficent Financial is proud to sponsor this podcast, and it is our hope that you enjoy this conversation about the impact we can have. The goal is to edify and inspire. Now please join our host, Dan Redman.
Hi, welcome to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Redman. Very pleased to be joined today by Natalie Kuhn. She is audit partner at Bekaert. They are an accounting firm and consulting and probably do all kinds of other stuff.
Oh, yes.
Very, very, vast services offered there. But Natalie's role is to basically work with companies and particularly nonprofits on the audit side. But before we get into all that with you, Natalie, tell me a little bit about yourself. You are one of the rare things on this show, which is a native San Antonian.
That's right. Yeah.
So
grew up here in San Antonio, went to Incarnate Word High School, and didn't go very far up the road to Trinity University for college.
There you go. Yeah. So apparently Natalie's never been outside Loop 410. But she is today because that's where we're recording.
I've been all over this. I've lived in various parts of the city. I know.
I anticipated that.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite thing about San Antonio?
Wow. I love the culture here.
Yeah.
I mean, I've growing up here all my life, obviously. I've lived in various areas of the city, but what always stays the same is just the culture, that small town feel, even though we're growing, which is amazing to see. I just love the level, the diversity, and like I said, the culture and the food.
Yes. No,
I'm a foodie, so I not only like Mexican food, but I like, Italian and Chinese, anything. But we have all of it here, and it's all great.
Well, then we may or may not be able to get around to talking Bekaert because we've got to talk about our favorite restaurants.
Oh.
Okay, we'll hold off on that for a bit. We'll hold off on that for a bit. Okay. So tell me about what got you into kind of this niche of working with nonprofits.
Sure. Well, as far as that, my career journey is concerned, so right out of college, I went to work for Big Five, worked for Anderson for a couple of years. And I think at that time in my life, it really just wasn't the right fit. You're always kind of in college. They're always kind of pushing you to start that way, start working with a Big Five firm and all that. And I did. So I just, the experience with
75-hour work weeks.
I don't know. I don't think I realized quite what I was getting myself into then. But no, I think just at the time in my life that it just wasn't the right fit for me. I didn't feel fulfilled by what I was doing. And so I decided to go into internal audit for SBC Communications, which is now AT&T, but at the time SBC Communications. And so was an internal auditor for them for about 5 years. And then I was pursuing some kind of side hustles. I was, doing acting, singing. I've had an agent, so I was doing, industrial videos, commercials, and so forth. So pursuing some things on the side, and wanted more flexibility. So the opportunity came up to work for, at the time, Randy Walker and Company. So it was a public accounting firm, but specialized in nonprofits. And I thought, interesting. I don't have any experience working with nonprofits, but this could be interesting because I love service. I'm a volunteer at heart, kind of service minded. And so I thought, okay, let me try this. And so I've spent pretty much my whole career there for about 20 years. And started working, of course, we specialize in nonprofits, so had exposure to that, those types of organizations. And then just moved on from there to another firm last year because we got bought out for another firm, and then just went through a recent acquisition with Bekaert. So I found
same desk, new business card.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They used to change the name on the door, right? Is that what they say? We're doing the same thing, but just a different name on the door. But no, it's with it comes challenges, but we're getting through them, and I'm getting a strong team, building a strong team together to continue to provide audit services to nonprofits here in San Antonio and surrounding areas primarily. So I've just grown to love nonprofits. It kind of marries my passion for working with nonprofits with my financial knowledge and expertise. So
in fact, you do some service. You're a member of Rotary.
Yes, I'm a member of Rotary.
And then I believe you're on a board or two.
Oh, I'm on like 4 boards.
Wow. Okay.
So I keep myself quite busy with the board service.
Indeed.
Which is an extension of what I do. in my profession. So it's just nice to
You want
be
to give any shout outs to
Sure.
the
Oh, yes.
organizations?
I'm on the board of Vibrant Works, which was formerly Lighthouse for the Blind, San Antonio. And also Healthy Futures of Texas, Salvation Army, and now most recently Meals on Wheels. So very excited to be part of all of those organizations. They just do amazing work in our community.
They do. And that is, San Antonio is blessed to have so many people and organizations and I think when you were talking about the culture of San Antonio, I do think that's part of, what makes San Antonio such a great place to live and raise a family.
Oh, definitely.
And that. So, so talk to us about, I'm sure some people probably heard auditor. Oh my gosh, what is this about? Why are we talking about this? Why is that important? What's important about your role within these organizations?
Yeah, definitely. So many nonprofits need to have an audit because they're trying to apply for a grant or they need to be in compliance with certain, requirements, especially if they are government funded. And so those are kind of the two primary reasons why a nonprofit would approach us about an audit. Or sometimes it's just good due diligence. It's just they want to make sure that they're showing that they're good stewards of the funds that they're receiving. So sometimes you just want an audit for that, for best practice purposes. And so, we come in, we perform the audit, and I feel personally rewarded by it because I feel like I'm indirectly helping this organization that is benefiting the community. And so, without our audit, they wouldn't be able to apply for these grants and continue their mission and continue moving their mission forward. And so what I particularly find interesting is that nonprofit, I like to look kind of beyond just the numbers or like look at what story are the numbers telling. So when I present to the nonprofits after the audit's all done, financial statements have been drafted and presented to their boards. I like to kind of go over the financial statements, not just, you had net income, net loss, but what is really kind of give them context for understanding their financial information. So I do it in a comparative format. So I kind of present their current year audit results and then side by side with like the last 3 years. So they can kind of see big picture. Okay, how is the organization doing? Are there any red flags, things that we should be concerned about? And so I feel like that's what I kind of want to bring to the table and give them that little value added so they can it helps invite conversation among the board or helps them in their decision making or conversations. So
sure. And so you mentioned that, certain grants and that type of thing require audited financials. Right. And that's, I'm sure a big source of it. Is there a size that once a nonprofit gets to a certain size, they're required to have audits from that perspective? Not
necessarily. I mean, kind of the threshold rule of thumb is about $1 million in revenue is generally when organizations are kind of at that size where they start really wanting to seek more grant funding. And some of the larger funders are kind of looking at organizations of that size to require them to have an audit. Yeah. And if they're smaller than that, then maybe they just require a review engagement, which is less in scope than an audit. It would be like your next tier down from having an audit would be just a review engagement, which provides just limited assurance on the numbers.
Gotcha. And so kind of walk through the process a little bit. So an organization is, they're wanting to apply for a grant, but the grant requires audited financials. They've never done that before. What should they expect going into that process? Right.
So when they reach out to us and if they've never been audited before, we kind of walk them through, okay, you need to make sure that your books and records that you have good books and records, that you've got your accounts are properly reconciled, that you're utilizing at least a good, reliable accounting software, which most of our clients utilize like QuickBooks or Sage Intacct or something of that nature. A lot of them don't have sophisticated accounting functions. They don't have a good bookkeeper or what have you, or someone on a regular basis that can maintain the book. So we highly encourage that they kind of seek either outsource their accounting or hire somebody who's competent to be able to handle the books on a regular basis because it's so important to have the numbers be correct and the books be cleaned up before we come and do the audit because we can't be the bookkeeper for them because it starts to impair our independence as auditors. And so we really try to stress the fact that it's important for them to have their accounting in order before we even start the audit. And also internal controls. So a lot of them look to us to provide recommendations on their internal control processes. And so we also do that as well to make sure that they have written policies in place so that way that it's clear, that they have proper segregation of duties and those things that should be there before an audit is done. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And so you've got clean financials. They reach out to you. Mm-hmm. You're going to sit down, or members of your team are going to sit down with them. What's the amount of time that it takes to get that done?
Right. And so the first step is to have the kickoff meeting with them, which is basically where they meet the audit team. So once they engage us to do the service, they've decided, okay, we want to use you to do the service. We get a team together that's going to do their audit, and we have that kickoff meeting so they can meet the team members. And then we also go over internal controls. We go over highlights from the fiscal year that we'll be auditing. So I ask several questions around that, like, did you have any lawsuits during the year? What is your board makeup? What is, and then we talk internal controls and those types of processes. And then from there, we talk about the timeline for the audit, which typically takes about 60 to 90 days, depending on, how much how much information and so forth there is to test. And so then the team commences with doing their testing and field work. And then our team will prep the draft. We'll prepare the drafted financial statements for me to then review. And then the client has provided the draft. And then the client will often ask me to present the results of the audit to their board. And so that's when I come in and do my presentation to the board. So that's the typical kind of the steps in the process. And from start to finish, like I said, it's about 60 to 90 days at the most.
Okay.
Just depends on how much, if they're also subject to extra compliance requirements, because there's a whole thing called a single audit, which is another type of thing. If they receive so much, and if they have so much in federal expenditures, then they're subject to a single audit. So,
okay. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like if I'm getting ready to apply for a grant that requires audited financials, mm-hmm. I best not be doing that if the deadline for the grant is July 1st.
Oh, correct. I mean, yes, if somebody comes to us and says, I need this in 30 days
we're
or something.
We're recording this in June, so.
Yeah. Right, exactly. It's just kind of, those tight turnarounds like that are almost impossible for us to do. And we really, I would say the shortest time frame we've ever turned something around would be like 60 days. I mean, that's assuming they've got everything ready, they can upload the documentation, and we can just get in there and get right to it.
What are some of the other things that folks need to know about the audit process on their end? Because most of the folks that will be listening to this, other than my mom, is going to be the folks that are like running an organization or involved in an organization at a board level and going, wow, I think we mm-hmm. probably need an audit.
Exactly.
So what else do they need to consider as they're getting ready to put out an RFP and that kind of thing?
Well, okay, so audits can be, pricey. Obviously, they wonder like, okay, I'm paying, a certain amount. What am I going to get for that? And I think they just need to be mindful of the fact that you don't always, like an organization doesn't always just need an audit for the sake of getting an audit. Like they should really look at why do we need an audit? Is there a loan commitment? Okay. Is there some type of compliance requirement that's requiring us to have it? Like I would say maybe entertain having like a review done first to get audit ready, especially if an organization doesn't know a lot about, they've never had an audit before, they don't know what's entailed. They really might not have strong internal controls, or their books might still be not necessarily on the clean side. I would get all that done first. Get your bookkeeping in good shape, get your controls, in good shape and documented, and then kind of baby step it into, getting a full-blown audit. Because I think a lot of times organizations just say, oh, we just need to have an audit, but they don't quite understand what that means. And then maybe they don't really need one, so why incur the cost of it if you're not really fully prepared to have one, or really don't even need to have one because there's not like something really requiring that high level of service. So
sure. So, what you're saying is mm-hmm. you don't just have an audit for fun.
No, I mean, there really is. You have to be prepared to have, be able to provide documentation, because audits require a lot of third-party evidence and confirmation. And so by third-party evidence, I mean you better have you have to have invoices and support for what you're recording on your books. Okay, yeah. And so you have to be able to provide that information and be able to be responsive about providing it and all of that. And so if you don't, then it results in a finding, and you don't want to have an audit with findings. Ideally, that's not the outcome you want to have, but you want a clean opinion. Okay, so our goal in an audit is to render an opinion on the financial statements. Okay, so ideally, you want to have a clean opinion, which is what we call unmodified. That is the best kind of quote unquote grade you can get in an audit, is to have an unmodified opinion. And so really that's what kind of an entity strives to have when they get an audit done. So
that's funny because my wife usually wants me to modify my opinions. So
it's kind of opposite of what you would think.
I was about to say unmodified opinion's good. I just heard that. That's right. What I wanted to hear about. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that pop up in audits that may apply to organizations, and I think this will be helpful for folks. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
What legacy will you leave? When those who come behind you follow in your footsteps, where will the journey lead? Will it lead to faithful stewardship of time, talent, and treasure? Will they become the beneficiaries of a life that was blessed beyond measure? Our legacy is being created with every decision, and what we invest in reveals our priorities and our convictions. In the end, did we build on reaction or intention? Short-sightedness or long-term vision, survival and scarcity, or did we build with enough margin to live a life on mission? You see the future and the need to prepare. You have a dream of the life that you want to live and to leave, and we're here to help you get there. To a place where you're truly leading life instead of allowing life to lead you. Where investments are personal, multiplicative, and purposeful. To a place where you live a life of impact long after you've passed the baton, and what you set in motion continues with longevity after you're gone. It is possible that in the pursuit of purpose, we can leave a legacy of philanthropy and a lifestyle of service where you made every act of kindness count and every investment made the world a better place, no matter the amount. This is what success can look like when we team with intentionality to achieve more than we ever thought we could, where our mission meets your life's vision and where you're set up to do well so that you can do good.
Welcome back to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Redman, joined today by Natalie Kuhn. She is an audit assurance and just
both.
overall, principal
right.
at Cherry Bekaert, a local CPA firm that in her role specializes in the nonprofit world. So we talked about audits and we talked about those types of things. We talked about that audit process, if you will. What I'm curious about now is what are some of the lessons from audits? And, don't use names, don't use, anything like that. But what are some of either the most common things that get in the way of that clean opinion? Or what is it that, you see organizations doing increasingly that you're kind of like, hey, guys, you want to be careful here because it's a slippery slope and, you're doing this now and that may be technically okay, but you're, perilously close to being in a problem that, is going to get you in trouble down the road. And just to clarify one thing, I should have mentioned this earlier. When we're talking about audits, we're talking about internal audits, not the audits that the IRS does. So,
well, you're talking about correct, not audits that IRS does, but they're external audits.
I'm sorry, external, not internal. Because, internal would be if you have your own team.
Exactly, right.
To do this. They're external, meaning your organization's coming in to do them, but
they're not.
We're not talking about the dreaded IRS.
Correct,
audit.
exactly.
Okay.
Very good distinction there.
So anyway, now that we've clarified that, already halfway in, what are some of the danger signs, warnings, that kind of thing?
Right. I would say the top one would be having too many audit adjustments. Okay. So we have to go in and essentially propose a lot of adjustments as part of the audit, then essentially we're cleaning your books. We're cleaning up your books, and we're acting in that capacity almost like a bookkeeper. So that, as I mentioned before, that sort of impairs our independence as an auditor. If we're having to go in and essentially fix the books that we have been hired to audit. So I would say that's the top thing, is that if an organization has a lot of audit adjustments, and that just is an indicator that your accounting function is lacking in some way and needs to be addressed or needs to be strengthened, and or maybe you need to have better reconciliation processes to make sure all your account balances are at the proper amounts before we go in and audit them. So again, it's that preparation work. It's making sure all of your year-end accounting adjustments are made by your accounting team first before those balances can be audited.
Sure.
And so making sure you're doing that prep work, that cleanup work to make sure your books are ready for when the auditors come in and audit them. Mm-hmm.
And so when you're taking a look at those kinds of things, and you're like, do you ever go to somebody and go, hey, we're going to do a timeout on the audit. Mm-hmm. We're going to let you do a review with somebody else, let them
or we give them an opportunity to clean things up, and then let's kind of proceed with finishing audit. Or sometimes we'll recommend that maybe we just do a review instead of an audit, just to kind of – the review is more inquiry-based. It's more doing analytical procedures. We're not having to tie any amounts out to like an invoice or vouch anything. It's much less in scope. So sometimes we'll downgrade the service. There have been very few times we've had to do, or we've recommended doing that, but it does happen that sometimes we just downgrade the service from an audit down to a review type of engagement.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the folks that are going to be looking at needing this, nonprofits try to run lean and mean, right?
That's right.
So very rarely do they have, a dedicated CFO.
Correct.
Or, somebody particularly with the professional training in that arena that, they may have somebody who knows how to run spreadsheets. And so congratulations, you're handling the financials kind of thing. So what do you recommend that organizations do? What's kind of the first steps in terms of those controls and doing that when you're dealing with folks whose primary mission in life is to serve others?
Exactly.
They're not. They didn't come and do this because wow, I really hope we have the best books in the nonprofit industry. Never met anybody in the. Exactly. They're like, okay, well, we're going to serve these people, and then we know we've got to make sure the numbers are accounted for, but. Our primary job is to go and serve these people. So what would you be telling an executive director or a CEO is kind of like the best way to make sure that you're, getting in front of this before it's a problem? And
especially with nonprofits who have a limited staff. So they only have 2 or 3 people. It's kind of hard to maintain that sort of segregation of duties that we look for when we're evaluating internal controls. And so that's when the board involvement becomes more important. Then we're asking, okay, so does your board review the bank statements? Or do they review the bank reconciliations? Or do they review? So that's when maybe it's more required of the board to kind of step in and fill some of that role that would be normally handled by an actual bookkeeper or somebody that they would have on staff to do the accounting. And so that's where we kind of emphasize that the board have more of involvement in that process, because a lot of nonprofits don't have sophisticated accounting functions. That's like the number one thing. That's the common thing we find. And so we try to provide some suggestions for mitigating controls that could be put into place to help still provide the level of oversight that should be there over their accounting, their transactions. Yeah.
What kind of trends have you seen recently in terms of anything that's popping up now that didn't pop up 2 or 3 years ago? Right.
Well, with federal funding becoming more kind of unpredictable and reliable, nonprofits are having to explore, other revenue sources. They're having to diversify. They're having to look for ways to tap into some funding sources that they didn't think of before. So perhaps they own a building that maybe has unused space. They might think, oh, well, maybe we can get some rental income from leasing out some of this space. So they're having to be a little bit more creative and think outside of the box about ways that they can create or tap into some funding sources or revenue sources that they didn't have before. So that's kind of one trend. They're having to do that. Also, more reliance on AI to help kind of reduce the amount of staff hours that would have to be put to like grant writing, marketing, donor research, the things that you would normally have one dedicated person you have to hire to do, maybe having AI do some of that. And then you can have those hours put towards, other parts of the organization. Still value added things, but just kind of do more with less, basically, is kind of the boat that a lot of nonprofits are in. And so they're having to be creative about redirecting some of those resources and finding ways to reduce, staff hours with AI, kind of balance out use of AI plus having actual physical staff.
And is that, from an audit perspective, if somebody says, hey, I'm having AI do this.
Or automation too, just trying to automate some of the processes that were once manual, and so again, we'll cut down on time for their staff. So we do try to encourage automating where they can, instead of having a lot of paper around, like keeping their invoices and records on paper, trying to digitize that or have an electronic filing system for scanning and saving them electronically. Mm-hmm.
I know one of the solutions on the funding side that organizations are increasingly looking to are things like social enterprise, and that where a nonprofit is running a for-profit entity that's, like a coffee shop or something like that. That's, what are there issues that pop up with that in terms of?
Right. So sometimes a nonprofit will have like an income source that's not directly tied to their mission. It's called unrelated business income then. And so they're subject to that what we call UBIT, unrelated business income tax. So then they may have to have a 990T form 990T filed for that, for any income generated from those kinds of sources. But it's possible for a nonprofit to have that type of like for-profit income, I guess you could say, that they're receiving, and it's just they might be subject to some tax on it.
The classic running the thrift store or that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, thrift stores are more. That's part of the mission oftentimes for most of our clients. So no, it's not. That wouldn't be subject to UBIT for them. But it would just be part of their mission, and they were to get donated items in, and they sell them, so they get thrift store sales, and that just shows up on their books as just a normal source of income. Gotcha. There's no ramifications for income, consequences for the income tax consequences.
All of you thrifters out there, you're doing good.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Keep doing what you're doing. So, what did I not get a chance to ask you about that you were hoping to get to talk about today, Natalie?
Well, I would just want to add that the current landscape of nonprofits it's kind of an interesting one. They're operating in. They're having to kind of think about, well, is there maybe a better way to serve the community if we kind of consolidate or merge? I know that's a topic of conversation lately about consolidation. And but I think at the end of the day, it's all about how we can better serve the community. And so I know it's a lot to kind of, if somebody starts their own nonprofit and then it's like they get passionate about it and then the ego kind of steps in, they don't want to entertain merging or consolidating. But, it has become kind of another consideration, another thing that for nonprofits to maybe entertain in order to deal with the funding, limitations and the fact that they're all trying to tap into the same resources. So I would say, you didn't ask me quite about like maybe that or what my thoughts were about the consolidation, but I think it can be a very positive thing. And I think nonprofits shouldn't be afraid to explore it and have conversations about it. Because I think it could definitely lead to just a more efficient way of serving our community too.
And I want the record to show that I didn't ask about it because this is.
I know it's a hot topic.
This is one of the issues that I do. I can and do sometimes get on a soapbox about.
Sure.
But if we think about it from the perspective of we were talking just a moment ago about how stretched organizations are in terms of their staff. Well, if you combine with another organization, that may free up one of your people to be able to, do those books full time and be able to stay in front of them in a way that makes your audit a lot easier. See how we're doing this?
I know, because it can kind of better leverage those resources and
exactly.
And,
But there is, there are still more nonprofits being founded every day. So, but if you find somebody that is working in that same space, the two of you together are going to do a better job than the two of you apart. Little synergy there. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, Natalie, and say, hey, I may want a review or I may, we are looking at doing an audit or something like that, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can always email me. Is it okay if I leave my...
Yeah.
Okay, so they can email me at natalie.kuhn, so Kuhn, that's how you spell my last name, at cbh.com.
Well, at least they don't have to spell out,
They don't have to spell out the Bekaert.
There we go.
Now, Cherry Bekaert is a national firm. Okay, so it has offices, throughout the country in different cities and states. And they all, in addition to providing services to nonprofits, we also have like a commercial audit team. We also have the advisory service, tax.
Oh, no, they're big.
They're a big firm, so I'm sure you know that. But
very, very big.
Anyway, just kind of put a little plug out for them. But
Absolutely.
But yes, we do it all. So full service, and be happy to provide guidance or help any nonprofits who might need it. They want to have further conversation and talk
Very
about
good.
their needs. Yeah, definitely.
So audit, you never knew audit was this fun, did you? No.
I try to make it fun for my. I try to make it.
I've had a couple conversations with Natalie about this. I can tell you, Natalie is very engaging and very fun. So that,
and I like to think of it as a
good.
partnership with my clients, not so much me coming in and being the gotcha kind of auditor and want to find something and write you up on it. It's more like I'm your partner and I want to be here with you when you're making those strategic decisions. So it's more than just coming in and auditing your books, but it's also giving you kind of recommendations and insight, things to think about as you start to think about what the next step is for your organization, just strategy wise, kind of where do you want to take your organization next? And so I'm kind of like to help in that way as well, provide guidance. So
There you go. I'm your auditor and I'm here to help.
Yes,
Okay, Natalie, you have a personal mantra.
I do.
See, not everybody has a mantra. I don't even know what a mantra is. I'm about to find out what a mantra is because Natalie's going to tell me hers.
Yes,
what is your
it is.
personal mantra?
And it guides everything I do in my life, and that is to do the most good for the most people. So I think as long as you kind of, personally, as long as I live by that mantra, I know I'm doing God's work. I know I'm on the right path, and I will serve the most people and make the most difference that way.
There you go. And who doesn't want an auditor who's doing that? Okay. Well, Natalie, thanks for joining us today. It's been great having you. On behalf of Philanthropy SA, this is Dan Redman reminding you to do well so you can do good.
Thank you for joining us at Philanthropy SA. We hope you found something to inspire you during today's conversation. If you know organizations and people who are making an impact in the community, we would love to hear about it. Until next time, do well so you can do good.